Hi, my name is Steve Wallace. This is Module 16, EDL 854, my case study on the missing Booster Club funds. So the story takes place at a middle school in a large city with about 450 students, where the socioeconomic status has changed significantly in the last 10 years, where many of the well-off families have moved to the suburbs, while more of the factory worker families have stayed in the city. But there are very high rates of parental involvement, and the principal, Mr. Stephen, needs that parental help because the school does not provide him much help. So he relies on parents to help at activities such as sporting events. One parent that's highly involved asked for some PTA money for her daughter to go on a cheer trip. Mr. Stevens decided that the answer would be no, since it would only be serving one student and not more students, and it was, pretty significant amount of money, over $700. Not too far after that, the mother was the ticket taker at an athletic event, and after that game, $50 goes missing from the tickets where the cheer mom was stationed. So problem identification and analysis. What do we know? I already talked about how this was a small middle school in a big city. Socioeconomic status has decreased over time. Parental involvement is high and needed. Mr. Stevens is the principal. Ms. Bowman is a highly involved parent with a daughter who qualified for a national cheer event. Ms. Bowman asked the PTA to pay $798 for her daughter to go to this cheer event through PTA money. Mr. Stevens says no, due to it only being one student. The next game, Ms. Bowman is working the ticket gate. References tickets 78 through 88 not being used because they were torn. Mr. Dumas, who is a parent, had a conversation with Mr. Stevens about how he had to use a $50 bill to get into the game. When reconciling the money, Mr. Stevens notices that $50 is missing, and there is no $50 bill to be found. What do we need to know? Who is the other gate worker, and did they count the money together before handing it to Mr. Stevens? Why were the tickets discarded? Why were they torn? Could the $50 bill have been used for change for somebody else? Could this have been an honest mistake and the $50 bill been put somewhere else because it was an unusual currency? Wouldn't Miss Bowman have heard the conversation between Mr. Dumas and Mr. Stevens? What I mean by that is they had this conversation while he was paying, so you think they would have overheard, which I would think Miss Bowman would probably second guess herself taking the $50 bill if it was talked about during that time. Identify the problem. There are many layers to this problem. The main focus is what happened to $50. Secondary focus is Miss Bowman was working at the gate and kind of had a motive to steal some money due to the PTA not paying for daughter's cheer trip. Third, Mr. Bowman doesn't have enough help from staff, so he has to depend on parents. Excuse me. And lastly, there should be a written policy and possibly some training on how to work with money at these types of events so that these type of problems hopefully don't occur. Category 3, proposed plan of action with appropriate strategies for implementation. So my plan of action would be to contact the SRO and let them know the situation and contact the district office. Now we're only talking about $50, but I also want to make sure that we're following what legally needs to be done, since this is money within a school. Talk to the other gatekeepers, talk to Miss Bowman. Could be an honest mistake. There could be a reason for something, so I wouldn't want to accuse anybody of anything. Just try to get a picture of what's going on. Provide written instructions to the parent volunteers and train them as needed, and probably change some of the written rules, like have the parents count the money in front of Mr. Stevens before he accepts the money. Have one staff member paid to help organize and supervise the parent volunteers, because Mr. Stevens gets very busy in these games and get pulled in a lot of different directions whether that's talking to a parent or helping with something else. He needs some help. Change the process of using the PTA money. With this money being raised, to put the pressure on the principal to have all of the yes and no, that puts a lot of pressure on him and could cause some relationship conflict. So to make it into a committee that makes decisions might help those types of situations as they arise. Appropriate strategies for implementation. Contact the SRO and fill out the appropriate paperwork. Let him take care of the legal side. Talk with parents and have another staff member present during these conversations. Would not want to accuse any parents, just trying to get a story and hopefully come up with the $50 because there was just a mistake made. Tweak the instructions, which I already talked about. Train the parents in how to handle the money. Make sure that the parents count the money together, then count it in front of Mr. Stevens. And then, like Mr. Stevens did, he counted it in front of the security officer. Get approval from the district to pay one employee to help at events. Most of the school districts I've been at, been fortunate enough that staff actually helps with these type of events, and it's a paid duty. Although sometimes with dances, it's not a paid duty at the places I've been. But that also, not only does it put a little extra money in teachers' pocket, it helps them build relationships outside of the classroom. And then go through an amendment process so the PTA can have a committee to make decisions. Again, this just helps the principal relieve him of some complete decision making and kind of put it in a committee's hand and allow them to make some decisions specifically to how the PTA money is used. Category 3, resolve issues based on promoting the success of all students. Issue number 1, $50 is missing from ticket sales. That money goes towards students. So how does that promote success? Funding is not easy in the education world, so we've got to provide students with as many opportunities as possible, and sometimes we have to raise that money on the outside. So losing $50, although seems small, if that happens on a regular basis, obviously that's going to cut into the opportunities. So we got to make sure we address that issue immediately and make sure that things like that don't happen by implementing, written policies and kind of changing the policies of how money's counted and how it's handled. Issue number 2, parents are asked to do a lot in the school, and many of them don't have a lot of resources themselves. Parental involvement is great, but students also want to see their teachers around. So this allows teachers to get to know their students outside of the classroom, talk about a basketball game, talk about a football game, talk about what they're doing with cheer, dance, things like that. So that built that relationship and that rapport with the student, so that when they're asking them to maybe work a little harder on assignment, maybe there's a different respect level there. And third issue, PTA needs to have a different decision-making process other than principal alone. As I've said already, this would take a lot off the principal's desk and allow the principal to continue to build relationships with parents and students without money getting in the way, and allow other people to make those decisions. Category 4, debrief the problem by reflecting on what you were thinking, feeling, valuing, and identifying issues that are unresolved or open to further discussion. What was I thinking? Number 1, how can Mr. Stevens figure out the money situation strategically without ruining a parent relationship? Ms. Bowman was a highly involved parent that provides a lot of quality things for the school, so you wouldn't want to accuse her of stealing the money, even though it kind of looks that way. So how do you go about that in a strategic way, not to ruin a relationship? Number 2, is there a way to help the kid pay for cheer camp? Couldn't do it with PTA money. Is there some other way that can fundraise, or some other money that could possibly be used to help this kid get to cheer camp? And then number 3, this reflects issues in a lot of urban flight areas where the city has changed dynamics because people with money have moved to the suburbs, and it causes a lot of strain on those city schools because they don't have the taxpayer money or just the affluency of individuals to help pay for things. My feeling a concern about how the student will pay for cheer camp, and how concern about how this whole situation will play out with the parent if they did steal the money and that sort of thing. Irritated that Mr. Stevens doesn't have any non-parental help. Confused as to why Miss Bowman would try to steal $50 rather than, there's, so many other ways these days to try to raise money, as simple as a GoFundMe account or something like that. Value. This reminds me of the importance of hiring and having the right people in the right places. Things go a lot smoother when you have good people helping. The importance of having written procedures that are followed to a T. Again, especially dealing with money as we've gone through this course, having safeguards and written policies in place is very important. And then valuing parents and the impact they can have on a successful school. So it was really nice to see how much parental involvement there is in this school and how much they're willing to help and put in their time. At every school I've been at, it's always a question of how we can get more parental involvement, and it doesn't seem like that's an issue at this school. Unresolved issues. Was the money actually stolen? What happened to the money? Will this plan work that we put into place here? Will the kid get to cheer camp? And what will happen in that relationship between Stevens and Bowman are the unresolved issues I still have floating in my head. Category 5, reflect on Standard 8 by providing evidence that you as a leader promote academic success, personal well-being of every student by ensuring effective, efficient management of the school or district to promote student, social, and academic learning. Component 1, how do you as a school leader promote effective and efficient management of the school district? Well, again, it goes back to written protocol and procedures. Teachers, parents, staff, anybody involved in the school, things go a lot better if they know exactly what the expectations are and how to handle certain situations. And when you're dealing with money, having these written procedures makes things go a lot smoother where you don't lose $50. Provide training when needed to parents, students, staff, anybody that's could possibly be dealing with money or other things that go on in the school. That training can go a long way to make sure there's no mistakes made. Number 3, work with others to solve issues quickly, fairly, and efficiently. So this $50 is missing. I wouldn't want to wait. I would want to attack it in the first 24 hours. I wouldn't want to wait a week, a month to try to tackle this $50 issue. Even though it's a small amount of money, we need to get after it and see how we can make sure that $50 doesn't get lost. How do you as a school leader promote social learning of every student? Provide activities outside of the academic realm. So these sports, cheer, dance, band, plays, all those types of things help students socialize because they have to work with others in all sorts of different types of settings. There's all sorts of social things that come out of activities outside of academics. Working with parents, the students see how the principal interacts with their parents and how adults interact with each other. Students interacting with adults at these events, that's all part of socialization. Following rules and laws, so when people are in certain situations, they're following protocol and the procedures, and then if something is broken, they know that there's going to be a consequence because the principal or the person in the leadership role is going to follow through those things. And then keeping students and families safe is another part of that, and that has to do with, again, making sure their money is getting spent where it should and on them. Category 5, how do you as a school leader promote academic learning? Extend the academic learning to outside school activities. Again, that academic learning, those things they're learning in the classroom go into those sports and other activities. Build relationships that extend in the classroom. I already mentioned that. You build these relationships outside of school, and then it helps in the classroom. And use funds to help students in a variety of activities. And last, my references. Thank you.